Hello, and welcome back to Coworking with Iris, where we talk about coworking and community. This is episode 31, and today I will be talking with Jasper Welch of Durango Space in Durango, Colorado. Jasper is quite an accomplished man. Other than having started a coworking space there in Durango, he's also one of the founders of the Mountain Coworking Alliance. So today we're going to talk about how the Mountain Coworking Alliance is connecting coworking spaces on mountaintops across the world, and how that benefits Jasper's space in Durango, and a little bit about Jasper's community as well. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Iris, thanks for having me. It's great to see you again. I know we first met way back in the Next Space days in Santa Cruz, and you were the community coordinator in those days, and we learned a lot from you and Jeremy and the crew there. And that was back when you had the first location there in Santa Cruz, and then the second one that you just opened up in South of Market in San Francisco. So yeah. it's been fun to work with you since then. Kind of, time flies when you're co-working, huh?
It sure does. Yeah. And wow, what a different world we're living in now too, as well.
It's true. Yeah. A lot's happened in the co-working movement.
It sure has. Well, Jasper, please tell us what your co-working story is.
Yeah, so just real briefly, for about 12 years, I ran a business incubator in Farmington, New Mexico, just south of Durango. And during that time, I was active in our trade association, which is now INBIA, which is International Business Innovation Association. Then it was the National Business Incubation Association. And at our annual conference is where I met Jeremy in April of 2010. And he and another lady from Grand Junction, Colorado, were presenting on co-working when it was, still pretty new. It was maybe, the movement was 5 years old, but it was still just starting to get traction. You guys had just started maybe a year before. And when I finished the conference and came back to Durango, there was another consultant I work with. Her name is Nancy Horton. She's our co-founder. She's since retired, but back then we talked and I said, we could do this in Durango. We could totally do it. So we did about 6 months of research, business planning, looked at 35 locations. The location we selected is actually a former architect's office. He's actually now the mayor of town, but this was his architect's office. So it's worked out great. So that was 6 years ago, and off we went. So we're still here, which in the co-working world is actually an accomplishment, since no one's getting rich doing this. We're having a lot of fun and making a lot of connections and growing a lot of companies, but probably if I was to do something just for the money, it wouldn't be co-working. You do it for the love of, for the movement, and for the people you help.
That's right. I don't think anybody's in this for the money. Well, maybe people think they can get into it for the money, but boy, are they going to be in.
That's right. They'll soon find out. Right. They'll soon find out. Well, and it's also kind of funny is that I do a lot of consulting. I've had a consulting practice for 25 years, and all the stuff I do in co-working, I just do as a volunteer and help other co-working communities. And so it's kind of one of the inside jokes in co-working is that if someone tells you they're a co-working consultant, they're probably doing something else, because none of the co-workers will pay for another co-working person to consult them. I mean, because it's such a skinny business model, right? But I think that's something that makes co-working movement unique, is that it really is organic. And I think that the most powerful parts of the movement are both the flexibility and what's happening in terms of, that it's changing. And then some of the things like our Mountain Coworking Alliance, where there's some very interesting verticals that are developing within the business. And then just how the whole world's changed based on freelancing. And we'll talk more about that during the interview.
Yeah. Well, and I did neglect to mention to our viewers and our listeners today that Jasper is actually sitting in his co-working space while we're talking. So please forgive the background noise for our listeners. You cannot see the surroundings, but we appreciate Jasper being able to join us in whatever form you're able to this morning. So. Well, great. Well, let's dive into the Mountain Coworking Alliance, because I'm just really excited by these coworking alliances that are cropping up all over the world and have been cropping up. And I think the Mountain Coworking Alliance is somewhat of a unique model, I'm guessing. And so let's talk about that. So how did the idea of the alliance come about?
So the way it happened is I can't, really take full credit. We're probably in the second tier of membership in terms of we don't have tiered membership, but we were approached after there's maybe 6 or 7 members. So Amy Kemp, that is with Elevate in Frisco, Colorado, which is in the Breckenridge, Copper Mountain, ski resort area. Summit County is what they call it. So Keystone, Breckenridge. It's probably one of the centers of the Colorado ski industry. And she has a really fine co-working facility there in Frisco. And then we had several other members, Spark up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Mm-hmm. And then I'm trying to remember the name of the co-working spaces in Park City. But we started with about 6. And then over the last probably year and a half, we've added Chamonix, France, Verbier, Switzerland. We have Revelstoke, British Columbia. So we're actually, what's kind of interesting is there is a marketing organization in the ski industry called the Mountain Collective. So with Vail Resorts trying to buy every ski area in the world and make it corporate, a lot of the independent ski organizations, ski companies have affiliated together to try to combat, Vail on the competitive market set. And it turns out that our Co-working Alliance members for Mountain Coworking Alliance are in a lot of the Mountain Collective ski towns. So our membership is fairly loose. We don't have dues. We pretty much we trade visas, and we have recently set up a website. I'll send you the link on that. And then Ski Locker, which is another one of our members in France, they have affiliated with a co-working space in Steamboat Springs. Mm-hmm. So Steamboat's obviously another, world famous ski area here in Colorado. So we probably have about 15 members right now. We do have a couple out of Reno, so we have some ski towns or close to ski towns, but we're trying to keep it where it's what we would call a mountain town. So the ski industry is a big part of it, but also most ski towns now have a fairly large, like a Telluride. They feature all sorts of festivals and things like that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are coming to these locations to ski or attend a festival, and they need a place to work. So hence co-working in ski towns.
Awesome. So you don't charge dues. Structurally speaking, are you more like a collective or a union, would you say?
Well, probably more like a collective. So we're sharing information. We have members that, cross-pollinate. This point, I haven't had anyone come in from France, but I think one day someone will show up.
Yeah.
and it's more of an informal visa program. It's like, 2 or 3 days. If you're a member of the co-op, you could go to one of the other co-working spaces. But we have done a lot of cross-marketing, and I think getting the, adding in, we have a Slack channel, which has helped share ideas. It's not as active as the co-working leadership Slack channel, that has like 300 or 400 members, which is, I found pretty effective. If you have a smaller group on Slack, it's not quite as organic in terms of information sharing. We've shared information on that, and we've done some cross marketing. So I think we still have a ways to go, but so far so good. And we have the different co-working spaces approaching us, which has been great. But if there's someone who's in the middle of Kansas or the middle of New Jersey, we probably would not include them.
Mm-hmm. I think Mountain is pretty clear.
No offense to Kansas or New Jersey, but they're pretty flat.
Right, they are pretty flat. And so how do you make decisions as a collective?
That's a good question. So what we do is we have a conference call maybe every other month, or when we feel like it's time to have one. And then we kind of as a group decide to accept someone in or not. Or as a group, someone makes a suggestion and we go, yeah, that sounds like a pretty good idea. So it's very organic and pretty much peer-based. It's almost like a town hall or a Quaker meeting or something like that. There's really no one, quote, in charge. But, we do it together. And we're small enough that we could do that. I think if we had 100 members, we probably have to get a little more organized.
Right. And besides being in a mountain town, how do you assess whether or not a space is a good fit? Do you have a set of criteria that you measure?
Yeah, good question. We don't have a formal set, but I think you need to be a town that has a major ski area, either in the community or nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of ski towns that the ski area might be 20 miles away. That's pretty typical. Like in Taos, New Mexico, the ski area is probably 15 miles up a canyon. That's pretty typical. You need to be a mountain town where most mountain towns have craft beer. They make their own chocolate. They have a big tourism component. They have festivals and events. They have a lot of out-of-town traffic. So, most of them are in the tourism business, but they're really in the winter tourism business. So it's kind of like a beach town is a beach town is a beach town, or a town that's by a lake is a lake town. Most people know what a mountain town is.
Mm-hmm. And so being a global collective, how do you find that this figures into your decision-making and governance, if at all, in contrast to, maybe a collective that you would have formed with just your local mountain communities?
Yeah, very interesting. Well, when we got started, we were US based, and we weren't US based because we wanted to limit membership. We just had to start somewhere. And so really we started off in the Rocky Mountain West in California. As we grew, we actually had like Revelstoke in British Columbia, they contacted us. And so that part has been very interesting. So the folks in Chamonix, Ski Rocker, folks in Verbier, they all contacted us, which I thought was a pretty cool setup.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell those coworkers to quiet down.
I know. Randy is our chief.
Laughing.
Yeah, Randy is our chief catalyst, so he's closing doors. Yeah.
Thanks, right. Randy.
We'll make sure the zoo animals have glass doors between us and them. Well, it's interesting. That's always the challenge in the co-working facility is the sound levels. So our mantra is louder than the library, but quieter than a coffee shop. But it's really that human interaction that makes it a co-working space. Yes. And we all know that in co-working that you're probably your main revenue stream is your private offices or reserve space, but that's not what makes the place come alive. It's the coworkers. So it's the people that cause problems that make your co-working space alive.
Yeah, and laughter is never a problem.
No, laughter's never a problem. Well, and then people ask us all the time. Can you bring me a plate? Yeah, sure. Pete, this is Randy bringing me a donut. How could I not?
Oh, thanks, Randy.
Yeah, how could I not? Even though whether I want a donut or not. But one of the things that we do, Iris, is people come in, they ask us the question, what makes your co-working space? Why is the culture so different? And why is it such a great place to work? And I said, well, we have about 5 things. One is there's no on-site boss. Okay, he or she's not here, and if you have a boss and you're a remote worker, I don't even know who they are. I couldn't even call them. Okay. 2 is there's no one to report you to the on-site boss. Right.
Right.
And 3 is that there's no prisoners. People hate their job come to work, so that negative energy doesn't come in. And then 4, everyone here is a peer. They're all working on whether it's a startup company, Get Prime, which is one where the laughter is coming through. They went through our accelerator here in Durango, and then we got accepted to Y Combinator. And so they're a Y Combinator company, and they're growing so fast right now. They'll probably move in the next 60 days because we don't have enough space. So anyway, it's been a pretty cool deal having that here. So because of that, everyone's working on their own stuff. Yeah. And then finally, that does create the community. And it took me a while to figure out why that was so unique. And even if we've had companies inside, and we've had several companies inside Durango Space, they have their own culture, but it's not enough to mess our culture up, if that makes sense. So when Get Prime moves, they've asked us to provide basically co-working services to them because they just want it to all go away. They said, Jasper, I don't want to mess with paper towels. I don't want to mess with coffee. I don't want to mess with any stuff. I want you to come down and just take care of it. So we're not sure exactly what that looks like, but we're going to give it a shot.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, because they've been a member for about 3.5 years, so they love us and we love them.
Well, I just love it when members leave, but don't want to because they've outgrown the space for physical reasons, but they really don't want to leave the community. It really is a testament to how strong the culture of your community is.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right.
So in terms of the Alliance, if you don't charge dues, how do you manage an operating budget if you have one? Do you have an operating budget?
Yeah, so right now we actually don't have a marketing budget. We'll, occasionally we'll chip in on something. I think that's probably our next step to maybe, do some sort of, I hate to call it, say a capital call, but something where we, chip in $100 a year or something like that, just to help us on a little more infrastructure. And I think probably 2017 we'll talk about that, or to see if there's some other things we can do to improve our network.
Yeah.
And we need to look at that. We've never had a formal meeting face to face. We've never had a global Mountain Coworking Alliance meeting somewhere, which would be pretty hard because we're talking people from around the world. And so when there's a handful of people, that's a pretty hard thing to do. But we need to kind of figure that out, or maybe do an annual meeting that's virtual or something like that.
And how hooked in with the co-workation or the destination co-working and digital nomad community are you?
Yeah, only through the individual members. So we don't have any formal, right now the Mountain Coworking Alliance doesn't have any formal relationships with other alliances. It's pretty much just the members. I
definitely see some opportunities for the business community who travels and skis to really be targeted as, as a marketing plan to target them through the associations that you're already working with.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's a lot of marketing opportunity. Amy Kemp, who's with Elevate there in Frisco, she used to work in Vail Resorts is one in their marketing department, doing social media and other projects. So she is really good at what she does. And so we've had some just really talented people within the association that have helped us on. We've been getting great press coverage and featured in some of the mountain magazines, but that's really to Amy and some of the individual members' credit. We have contracted with someone to do it.
Right. So. Yeah. Well, if you can do it with your members, that's always better. And so what are the immediate benefits that Durango Space saw in joining the Mountain Collective or the Mountain Coworking Alliance, excuse me?
Well, I think for us is when you have the smaller, within the co-working world, and, we both seen big changes. Now there's the corporate part of it. So there's the WeWorks of the world, which some people would argue is co-working or isn't. I don't think making those distinctions really is all that helpful. I think it's actually part of the market. But they're going to operate on a corporate level. So it's kind of like if you have a small town, Southwest Airlines is never going to fly to your town because that's not their model. Okay. So we're never going to have a WeWork in Durango. That's not their model. But there also are the regional, models like a Next Space, like, there's tons of those. But let's face it, most of our co-working facilities are independents. And particularly if you're in a rural area, it's even trickier. And so what we found is the Mountain Coworking Alliance has just been another reason that people realize we exist and that we're not just so isolated that there's no interaction, if that makes sense. So a lot of times on the visa programs, for us, they haven't been that effective because not that many people get all the way to Durango. Okay. But we still want to be part of the community. And so what we've seen is we had a very interesting thing happen last August. I was approached by an economic development organization in the northwestern part of Colorado, and they're really struggling with reinventing some of their economies, trying to shift away from a natural resource-based economy, whether it's coal or natural gas. And they approached us to put on a conference for them on entrepreneurship and economic development. So I invited all the co-working spaces, the accelerators, everyone who's doing like code schools and mountain towns. And we had no one from Denver, no one from Colorado Springs, none of the fancy people came. It was just the locals that are actually doing it at the rural level. And so whether it's something like that or something like the Mountain Coworking Alliance, it's demonstrating that smaller communities can play in a global market, where in the past it was pretty hard to do it. And I think with connectivity that we have coworkers here at Durango Space that do business around the world. You probably heard of Osprey Packs. They're in the outdoor gear manufacturing. Their CEO has been here at Durango Space for the last 4 or 5 years. He just retired from that position. There's a company called Verdi Group, and Verdi Group is probably one of the top PR agencies in the outdoor gear manufacturing business. They represent like K2 and North Face and these big brands. And so Tom, the CEO of Osprey, just joined Verdi Group, and he's going to continue to office out of Durango Space. So what we're seeing is some really interesting organic connectivity. And so whether it's through the Mountain Coworking Alliance, whether it's through the economic development programming that I do, whether it's through the Durango Space connections that we have, our members, just like you saw there in Santa Cruz and some of the other co-working spaces you've worked with, it's pretty amazing what the connections are. And I think before 10 years ago, that connectivity into the rural areas didn't exist to the degree it is now.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing too is we just kind of laugh at our big city neighbors because here we're in this great mountain town, 5 craft breweries. I get a little emotional. We make our own chocolate. We have a great local first buying program, unbelievable farm to table. What a great place. So we're attracting talent. We're attracting software engineers. We're attracting people who want to raise their families here. And really we're kicking butt. And it doesn't matter if we live in the big city. We can go there if we have to, So if we have to go to, come out to the Bay Area or go down to Phoenix or go to Denver, we can go there, but thank God we don't live there.
Yeah.
Okay. And right now we can actually do that. I mean, it's a very viable thing. I have guys that are IT recruiters for SAP that work out of here. I have a guy in the back today that he is the chief technology officer for a big company back in Washington, D.C. that works with large government data arrays. He's doing conference calls with fancy people all over the country. And he's doing it out of Durango. So that is actually a real thing now. And I don't think that a lot of people realize how that economic restructuring has occurred. And right now, if you're talented, you don't have to live in a crappy place.
Yes.
Unless you want to.
So I mean, and I've been just thinking so much in the past week or so since my interview with Tony Bacigalupo last year about the workforce and really, retraining the work or training the workforce for the new economy. I mean, this is totally off topic, but, I grew up in the 80s and we were taught in junior high and in high school. I remember teachers teaching us that, in the future, jobs are going to start disappearing. Manufacturing jobs are going to disappear because of automation. We didn't call it automation back then, but that is exactly what we were referring to.
Yeah.
And we're living in that world now. And I think it's important to remember that, jobs aren't coming back from some place that they went to.
They're not.
It's not. We have to retool ourselves. And our workforce to meet the needs of the new economy. And as we know, 40% of the world's workforce will be contingent by the year 2020, potentially in this country as well. And, how and really empowering people to understand that if they get themselves some skills, either skills that match their talents or skills that match talents that they didn't know they had, somehow get them some skills that really work in this new economy, they can work from anywhere and be just as successful.
It's totally true. So we're calling it the now economy.
Yes.
And so the now economy is that right now you can do this stuff. It's not like it started occurring. It's actually happening right now. So then for example, one of our members within the week, she had a pretty nice job offer from a remote location. So all of her coworker peers have been coaching her. Well, you don't have to take the job. You could negotiate a remote location job. Okay. I mean, it's just really interesting. And so with our coworkers, I just tell them the marketplace will determine your compensation. What you need to negotiate for is terms and conditions. Where do you want to live? Do you want to work out of Durango Space? Do you really want to leave Durango and go move to Omaha, Nebraska, or not? Okay, it could be you have to travel to Omaha, Nebraska, but remember, if you're working in a big city, you're traveling places anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So why have an expensive place in a big city and then you have your cabin somewhere out in the country? Why not just flip it around, live in the cabin?
Yeah.
Right?
Love it.
Okay, and you can always get a hotel in a big city.
Yeah.
And so that is actually, now that's not for everybody, I understand, but if you're a young person and you're in your 30s raising kids, there's places you don't want to be. There's places you don't want to raise your kids there. You want to raise them in a small town. So that's what we're seeing, and it's been very, very interesting.
Yeah, wonderful. So getting back to the Alliance, I have two more questions.
Yeah.
How do you feel that this benefits the members of the Alliance, if at all? Are you
I think where it benefits because all of our members are really small, independent co-working spaces in relatively remote locations. I mean, so if you're in a Telluride, or you're in a Park City, or you're in a Basalt, Colorado, which is just down the road from Aspen Snowmass, you're in a relatively isolated area. So there might be a big marketing brand. I mean, everyone's heard of Vail. A lot of people have heard of Revelstoke in British Columbia. Everyone's heard of Chamonix. So that's a pretty large brand from a winter ski marketing point of view. But you're just a little dinky co-working space in an isolated area. And so I think what it's done for the Mountain Coworking Alliance is that you realize there's other people that have the same dream and vision that you have for their mountain town. They have the same challenges of trying to maintain enough of a local co-working base that pays the bills, but still be available for guests that come in. And then we've also been able to share a lot of ideas, how we're pricing memberships, what kind of things we're doing to make our co-working facilities come alive. And so that part's been, because we're really isolated. We're isolated geographically. And so if you can have a place where you know that your fellow members are experiencing the same thing, I think can be really, really, really helpful.
And how do you feel that this benefits the members of the spaces themselves? Let's talk about them.
Yeah, I think for the members, it's probably a little more indirect. I think our members realize that Durango Space has always been a leader in the rural area, what I call non-metro co-working, and they see what we're involved in, and they see some of the ideas that we're implementing, and they realize that Jasper most likely didn't think of all these things. Okay, I mean, we all want to credit ourselves as being really smart, but let's face it, we all have a lot to learn, and so I think that our members have benefited because of the ideas that we've been able to bring up. And that part's, for example, we have a little space that's north of us. It may be one of your interview topics, but it's Dennis and Josh that run Proximity up at Montrose, and they're actually putting together some pretty good co-working access, internet access control, membership billing, and they're going to start competing with Nexodus and some of the big boys. But they put it together because they built a company and they put it in a co-working space because they like that environment. And then when they started trying to run the co-working space, they said, God, we ought to be able to automate this stuff. So they created part of their company to automate co-working, which a lot of people are trying right now. I understand that. But they're doing it from the rural point of view. And so they're just down the street from us. So it's created some other interesting dynamics. And they'll probably eventually join the MCA. They've been bugging us about it. And I said, well, you really need to have a place in Telluride so you're in a legit ski town. Because Montrose is near ski towns, but it's not really a ski town.
Right.
So I had to poke fun at them a little bit. But.
Yeah. And then my final question is what advice do you have today for somebody who wants to start their own co-working alliance?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think one is you have to manage your expectations. When you first talk to people, they're going to probably wonder what you're talking about. It would be good if you could get maybe 3 or 4 or 5 spaces. I know that some of the city co-working alliances like Denver has a really good co-working community. I think there's some good action out in the Bay Area. So it'd be good if you can get 3 or 4 people together and kind of start there.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is I'd let it grow organically. And I think a really good sign is if someone approaches you to be a member, that's a really good sign as opposed to you trying to push it out on other people.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing is you need to set up a Slack channel or something where you can maintain a kind of a 24/7 platform that's not going to cost you a lot of money that people can communicate on. And then the fourth thing is to start trying to figure out how can you market in your unique area. So in our case, mountain towns are a pretty unique sort of thing, and I think having the ability to affiliate market. So the way that would work for us is we've been featured in some really interesting mountain magazines, the fancy mountain magazines, and here's a little Durango Space. It's like we would never get in that by ourselves because there's no interest, right? But if suddenly you have a collection of mountain co-working areas, that could be something. And then I think the fifth thing is you need to be realistic on what it can actually do. It's not going to totally change your business or change your co-working space, but it's just part of the mix. And I think it's been good for us because we've learned from the other co-working spaces and thought of things that we probably should be doing that we weren't as a result of that. And then when I've gone to some of the co-working conferences, the unconference, like when I was out in Berkeley, I met some of the other co-working spaces I'd never met before. So
yeah, that's a wonderful benefit of
and that might be something that when we look at the unconference that maybe we set some time aside for some of the collectives to meet, because the chances are we'd probably be better off trying to meet there than trying to do our own meeting.
Yeah, at my last co-working conference that I was at, we had a wonderful meeting about co-working alliances.
Yeah. So and where is the next USA?
Well, the location has not yet been announced.
Okay, all right, okay, but it would be
keeping us in suspense.
Would it be in the spring though?
It is in the spring. It's in May.
Okay, good. Okay,
May.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, Jasper, tell us what's next for you.
Yeah, so I think what's next for us is we are trying to look at could we extend our co-working services to other locations in the community. I think we're looking at that. I don't necessarily want to get into the buy and lease the building thing, but I might be interested in the co-working services. Second thing is we're probably on our 7th wave of coworkers, so we're always kind of changing our model to absorb the next wave of coworkers. So I think we need to get that figured out. And then I'm giving a speech next month. I'm getting a lot of calls from these rural areas that are really scrambling to figure out their economic development.
Yes.
And I remember I was up in Grand Junction. We had 100 people at this conference, and I actually had a really interesting email back from one of the small towns that says, we really don't need entrepreneurs. We don't know what those little people would do for our community. We just need a company with 20 jobs. And I'm thinking, are you serious? People actually would say that. And so I teased them. I said, there's this stork. And this stork flies across rural communities in the United States, dropping companies of 20 to 40 employees just out of the sky. Okay, it's just, sometimes it might land in a forest or a swamp, And I said that crane is extinct. And if you're a small town, you're going to have to build and develop your own small town. And co-working is going to be part of it. Accelerators, you're going to have to do it yourself. And you can start by making your own beer, making your own chocolate, making your own coffee, farm to table. There's a lot of things you can do. And so I've been meeting with elected officials, and I'm just blunt. And right now I'm old enough. If they like me, fine. If they don't, fine. It doesn't really matter. But someone needs to be honest with them. That, like you were talking earlier, Iris, those jobs are not coming back.
Yeah. And
if you don't reinvent your community and reinvent how you do business, you're, the only export you're going to have is your kids. You're going to ship them out, and you're going to buy beer from Budweiser and chocolate from Hershey's and cars from somewhere else. And while that is okay, that's not going to build your economy. Yeah. And that's where co-working is hyper local. And I think that a lot of the corporate attempts to make co-working corporate will fail because co-working is hyper local. It is hyper local, and that co-working space really needs to reflect the community it's in. And if it doesn't, it probably won't survive.
Yeah. Well, Jasper, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful talking with you, and I really enjoyed you presenting to us about the Mountain Coworking Alliance as well as rural coworking.
And you bet. And thanks so much for including us, and thanks for your patience under technical difficulties. But it looks like we got it worked out.
We did, didn't we?
Yeah.
Us coworking folks know how to make it happen.
Yeah, we can make it happen. We're not afraid of technology.
That's right. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign out from here. Okay.
Okay.
See you later.
All right.
Bye.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And for other episodes, please go to coworkingwithiris.co, where you can also subscribe to the podcast. Keep doing the great work we're doing every day and changing people's lives for the better.